everybody. I hope everyone's doing well this afternoon, or depending on what time zone you're zooming in for, good morning. My name is Stephanie Bonnick. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach here at the National First Ladies Library and Museum. Just first and foremost, feel free to throw in the chat where you're zooming in from today. I already see a few, such as Arizona, Atlanta, and somebody from the UK. So welcome this afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Just a bit about our program today. I'm very pleased to introduce Ronni Diamondstein. An avid reader since her childhood, libraries, books, and writing are her life's work. As a school library media specialist, and teacher of gifted and talented students in the US and abroad, she has nurtured her students' creativity by sharing her own love of reading with them. She grew up reading and writing stories and creating writing opportunities for herself. And many years later, she even gave a voice to her toy poodle by creating the Maggie Mae Pup Reporter column in a local magazine, writing from a dog's point of view that then developed into a blog. Ronni graduated from Syracuse University, attended Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and has led writing workshops and open mics to encourage people of all ages to tell their stories. She proudly served on the board of Chappaqua Children's Book Festival and is a past president of the Chappaqua Library Board of Trustees. She currently still lives in Chappaqua, New York with her toy poodle, Maggie Mae. Today's program is all about Jackie and the books that she loved, which was published. And finally, it's in print as of November 7th, which if you are interested, we do sell signed copies, courtesy of Ronni at the National First Ladies Library and Museum in our gift shop. A bit about this book. In this inspirational celebration of reading, Ronni Diamondstein, with her engaging writing style, introduces readers to an independent and confident Jackie and how books guided her life. The insightful picture book biography paints the portrait of a child captivated by reading and a love of literature and writing, from 5-year-old Jackie reading Chekhov stories and shushing her friends to be quiet so that she can read at Miss Porter's school, to even her desk as an editor in the last 2 decades of her life. Feel free to throw questions into our Q&A section as we're going along. And following Ronni's presentation, Michelle, our curator, director of research and collections, is going to help facilitate those questions. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone.
So thank you so much, Stephanie and Michelle, for having me here today to speak about the book, Jackie and the Book She Loved. I also want to thank Allison Kaplan, who was Stephanie's predecessor, who actually was the one who first invited me to join you today. So I'm going to share my screen and start reading this book that it's my debut picture book. And I will share my screen and we will start reading. So, Jackie and the Book She Loved, written by Ronni Diamondstein, illustrated by Bats Langley. If you produce one book, you will have done something wonderful in your life. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Little Jackie Bouvier learned to read at an early age. She kept her books in a pair of bookcases that her mother had given her for Christmas. She started a library of her own with many about ballet and filled the shelves in no time. Sometimes when Jackie was supposed to be napping, she would spend time in the guest room where the grown-up books were kept and sat on the windowsill reading. Jackie had a vivid imagination and told people that a brown bear lived in her bedroom. She wrote and illustrated stories and poems, often about the family animals. There was The Adventures of George Woofty Esquire, about a spirited terrier, and a funny biography of General de Gaulle, a bored and blasé black poodle. Her mother collected Jackie's early writings, each piece in Jackie's firm, ornamental handwriting, and bordered with a drawing. The stories on thick white notepaper were tied together with bits of ribbon or brightly colored string. Oops, we have to move. That was a mistake. Sorry. Every Wednesday after her dance class, Jackie visited her Grampy Jack Bouvier in his New York City apartment. The two would often memorize poems together, and he encouraged her to write her own. One of the poems she wrote was titled Sea Joy. When I go down by the sandy shore, I can think of nothing I want more than to live by the booming blue sea as the seagulls flutter round about me. I can run about when the tide is out with the wind and the sand and the sea all about, and the seagulls are swirling and diving for fish. Oh, to live by the sea is my only wish. Jacqueline Bouvier, 1939. Jackie wrote birthday poems to her mother and father. Oops, I don't understand sorry about that. Jackie wrote birthday poems to her mother and father and for family anniversaries, but Jackie always loved reading the best. When she was 15, Jackie went off to Miss Porter's, an all-girls boarding school. Shh, I'm reading, she would tell her roommate Nancy while the other girls were talking. Jackie often could be found in her room reading and writing poetry just as she had as a child. She even wrote stories and poems for the school newspaper. All of Jackie's hard work paid off as she got older. She won an essay contest for a fashion magazine when she was in college. The magazine editors loved her work, which was titled People I Wish I Had Known. Jackie had always been interested in history and decided she wanted to know people better. She thought that journalism would be a good way to do that. So as an adult, she took a job in Washington, D.C. with a popular newspaper and went around town asking questions and taking pictures of people. She interviewed everyone from bus drivers and children to ballet dancers and VIPs, including her future husband, Senator John F. Kennedy. A love of reading was something Jackie had in common with John Kennedy. They both loved books so much that when she went to London for work, she came back with a super heavy suitcase jam-packed with books as a gift for him. Jackie married John F. Kennedy. They enjoyed reading and even writing together. Jackie encouraged him to write an award-winning book. Jackie helped do the research for this book and even wrote down parts of it on lined yellow paper. Jackie's writing skills helped Senator Kennedy become President of the United States. The voters got to know him and his family through her weekly newspaper column, which helped him get the votes he needed. Sorry about that. Oops, I'm so sorry. I have to go back. Oh, sorry about that. Just having a little technical difficulty. Here we go. When President Kennedy took office, Jackie became the nation's first lady. She thought there should be something young people could take with them as a souvenir after visiting the White House. So she designed a White House guidebook, which she also edited. As a mother, she hoped her love of books would inspire her children, Caroline and John, making them readers too. In 1975, Jackie got her first book in publishing, a perfect fit for a fan of reading and writing. She became a consulting editor for a publisher, but refused any special treatment. In her small windowless office, she answered the phone and sat on the floor laying out photos. In the summertime, she would work from her home on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Even though she was very famous, for Jackie, the author was the true star of every book. She made sure, I'm sorry, I think I missed a page here and I'm really sorry. I don't know, let's go back a bit. My apologies. Sadly, President Kennedy died in 1963. After that, Jackie and her children eventually moved to New York City. Jackie encouraged Caroline and John to read great writers and poets. And as she had done as a child with her Grampy Jack for each birthday or holiday, Caroline and John would write or choose a poem for their mother, illustrated and pasted in a special scrapbook. Now, go on to the next. In 1975, Jackie got her first job in publishing, a perfect fit for a fan of reading and writing. She became a consulting editor for a publisher, but refused any special treatment in her small windowless office. She answered the phone and sat on the floor laying out photos. In the summertime, she would work from her home on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Even though she was very famous, for Jackie, the author was the true star of every book. She made sure to stay in the background and let her authors shine. Here we go. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis had done many wonderful things in her life. She was most famous for being the First Lady of the United States, the wife and widow of President John F. Kennedy, but she made her mark as an editor. A love of literature guided her life. The books that she read and that she edited were her story. She never wanted to write a memoir. However, now her books are her legacy and have painted a self-portrait. And I'm going to talk about the back matter. And I think my mouse has a mind of its own and kept wanting to go back and look at different parts of the book. So my apologies. So when I was writing the book, the first drafts of it had more information in it, and I had a wonderful editor at Sky Pony Press, Nicole Frail, and we had to really make the narrative a little gentler for young people. So we pulled out a lot of information and then created a timeline of Jackie's life from her birth in 1929 in Southampton to the end of her life in 1994, and sprinkled in things like, for example, she loved horses, and there's really nothing about horses. So we included in the timeline the fact that when she was 5, she and her mother won a prize in the East Hampton Horse Show. And then also, because we had to take out a lot of details about the books that she loved when she was little, in my first draft, it started, little Jackie Bouvier loved to read at an early age. And then I said she read Peter Rabbit, she read Lord Fauntleroy, but we took all that out and we had to we put it in the, I wrote it in the author's note, and it also tells why I wanted to write this book and why it was important to me in the author's note. And then this was rather interesting. Let me go back. Seriously, this mouse has a mind of its own. So when Jackie edited nearly 100 books, and we couldn't put that all 100 books in the back of the book. So when the sales team met with the people from Sky Pony about the book, they wanted to know what were some of the books that she read. And if you noticed, a lot of the illustrations had the different titles of books that she loved when she was a child, and also the books that she edited. So Nicole said to me, well, can you come up with a list of 18 books that would be representative of the books that she edited? And that was quite a daunting task. And I tried very hard to give a cross-section of the different interests that she had, and especially to include the children's books, because she did edit more than a few children's books. So that is that. And then, of course, we have the selected sources and the source credits. So that about wraps up my presentation. I'm looking forward to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm looking forward to talking to Michelle about Jackie and the book she loved and how it all came to be.
Oh, Ronni, I love this book. It's just delightful, even with mouse problems. It was so much fun. That we have so many cool questions coming in for you. So let's ask you some of these questions. First of all, someone wanted to know, did you do any research for your book at the JFK Library?
Well, actually, no, I did not, because a lot of this I wrote during the pandemic. Well, this part I wrote during the pandemic. But I did use some of the resources online, because you can access some information from the Kennedy Library. And also, this is an interesting thing, when the illustrations were being done, Baths had her using her left hand for, yes. Oh. And I was pretty sure that she was a righty, because I have, and one of the reasons I didn't really need to go to the Kennedy Library was I probably have almost 100 books about the Kennedys, Jackie, and such. So I had a lot of resources here, and I've actually been researching her since 1994, which I'll talk about. So what happened is I called the Kennedy Library and spoke to one of the librarians. As a librarian myself, it's always good to talk to other librarians. And I said, do you know if she was I think she was a righty. Some people think she was a lefty because she did things with her left hand. You saw pictures of her with her left hand. I won't say what she was doing, but she did this. And but a lot of people who are righties use their left hand for that. So they said they'd look into it, and then there was someone who still worked at the Kennedy Library who knew her and worked with her, and so he was able to say that yes, she was a righty. So, but as far as the research, I may as well answer that question. So, and tell the story of how this came to be. In 1994, after Jackie died, first of all, I've always admired her and President Kennedy. I was 8 years old when he became president, and he had a real influence on my life with his ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Service was always something that was a big part of my life. And I remembered her from when the White House restoration, and then when he was killed, and how she so graciously led our country in mourning the president, and how she researched Lincoln's funeral, and because he was another assassinated president, and she made sure that everything was just done wonderfully. So over the years, I've followed her and the Kennedys and have lots of books. And so in 94, I had this idea actually for a novel about her, because even though I was a children's librarian, I was doing a lot of other writing and adult things. So I started working on a novel. And then when I was interviewing some people, I spoke to Ted Sorensen, who was President Kennedy's speechwriter and counsel. And then I also spoke to Margot Datz, who illustrated Carly Simon's picture books that Jackie edited. And I knew Margot from Martha's Vineyard. And when I told her I was doing a novel, she said, you should really write a children's book. So then I started working on like a children's chapter book. And this was in the 90s. And they didn't have, in those days, picture book biographies, the way we see so many of them now. They really weren't. It wasn't a thing. And so over those years, I did a lot of, I still read things about her. And then about 5 years ago, I got this idea about doing this story, because I saw this thread, and there were books written, there were a couple of books that came out about Jackie, the editor. So I thought, that's the thing, the reading and the writing. And the other part of this is, a lot of Emma Hamilton, who's the daughter of Julie Andrews, who writes a lot of children's books, said, you need to have a personal connection to the story. And for me, even though I never knew Jackie, I admired her, but we have a lot in common. Writing and reading and books have been an important part of my life, and so hers. Plus, we also both love great sunglasses. So so I didn't go to the Kennedy Library, but I did use them as a resource online and by calling them, and they were wonderful. So,
and I think you bring up a really good point, because reading this book, even as I was listening to you read it again, you put so much little tiny detail in everything. For instance, and I know that you know so much more, and I so admire how you were able to make it, simplify it for children, to get it right to the meat of things. For instance, when you write that about how President Kennedy, who was not president at that time, how he wrote Profiles in Courage, and Jackie helped him with it. and you write down something that she helped research the book, and even wrote down parts of it in lined yellow paper. And it's something that I think that she's not given any credit for, that she helped him write that book. And I loved how you put that. That's very important information to know about. And you do it so beautifully in this children's book.
Thank you. Well, it isn't unusual for spouses to be involved with the I know other writers some famous writers, and I know their wives read the book and give them feedback. And Jackie was a journalist, and she loved history and researching, and he wrote that when he was recovering from his back operation. So he probably we didn't have the internet then, we couldn't do research online, and it was probably easier for her to do it. Plus, I think she probably enjoyed doing it, because look what happened later on. She became an editor. So she probably edited the book, and we don't even know that. So.
Right. I think it was really a marvelous little nod to something that she worked so hard on. And did you or Bat work together on what you wanted to put in this book? It's all these little details. If you know much about Jackie Kennedy, there's times when you see pictures in her room, or like I'm thinking in the when she's at Miss Porter's, you put pictures on the wall, and there's the pictures of her riding her horse and things like that. Such nice little tiny details like that you put in there. Was that, I know that was on purpose, but how did you and Bat work together on doing that?
So Bat's, it's not common for the author and the illustrator to collaborate very much with picture books. I think it's a little bit more with nonfiction. So I have to say that I was really lucky. I had a voice in even who the illustrator was. And then because I had such a vast collection of things and of books, and in particular, one of the things I want to mention is on the cover, if you notice, like this horse statue, that we found because after she died, her children auctioned off a lot of her property, and there was an auction at Sotheby's, which I went to, and there was a catalog, and in the catalog it had a lot of photographs of her apartment, and there was a horse statue on her piano, and I shared a lot of pictures from that catalog with Bats. He, of course, did his own research, and we knew Jackie loved horses. So, and she actually, I think, had a horse. Her grandfather had a horse sent to her when she was at Miss Porter's.
Yes.
I can't think of its
Donnie,
name.
her favorite horse.
Yeah. So Donnie was there, and she loved horses. And that's why, the horse statue. And the other thing is, so I sent a lot of pictures. I had pictures of her cousin, John Davis, who was a Bouvier. He wrote a book about her, and I actually had a correspondence with him in the 90s. And he kept saying to me, you have to get an agent, you have to get an agent. It only took me 30 years to get an agent, or almost 30 years. And, he had a picture in that book of Grampy Jack. So I sent that to Bats so he would see what because it probably wasn't easy for Bats to find pictures of Grampy Jack. So, and then the other thing that was really great, normally we corresponded through our editor. There was no direct communication, but she now knows this. When we connected on social media. So a couple of times he would send me a message, and one day, this was really funny. It was on a weekend. He says to me, do you know what kind of birthday cake Jackie liked? And I said, yes, I do. I have the book Cooking with Madam by Martha Scubin, who was the nanny for the children and then became the cook. And in that book, there are recipes and lots of photographs of the family and the birthday cake. And here's the birthday cake. I sent him a picture. And so it's things like that you're mentioning. And you know, he did a lot of his own research, but I really had a lot of pictures. I sent him pictures of her as a little girl that I had from the books that I had. And, you know, even the blue and white vase, she had a vase like that was in the Sotheby's catalog. So all those little details. And so we had a really marvelous collaboration. And I know he enjoyed working on this book very much, as did I. And, you know, we'd often talk about, like, you know, he asked me, well, what year was the Prix de Paris contest that she won? Because he wanted to make sure, and we found the Vogue issues from that year so that would be authentic. And it's, you
So
know,
smart.
Well, we really, you know, I wanted to make a beautiful book for Jackie because she, you know, Margot said to me when I was taught Margot Datz, Jackie was a handmaiden of beauty. And I really wanted to live up to that and do something that, although, like I mentioned to you before we came on the air, that I don't think she didn't really like, I'm sure she didn't like people writing books about her, but I'd like to hope that she would like this book, and that she would appreciate that I saw this important part of her life. And
I agree. I think she would absolutely love this book because she was so passionate about books. And I felt like the last part of her life, she was living the best life that she had. You know, she was finally doing what she passionately loved. And I'm sure she would just love this book, Ronni. I'm sure she would.
Well, I'd like to hope so. And, you know, I want to mention one of the books that she did was, one of the last books she worked on was Three Golden Keys by Peter
Yes.
C. He's a children's book author. And I know him, and I didn't talk to him while I was writing the book, but I love his books. You know, I was a children's librarian, so, and I even own some of them. And when I told him that I had written this book, he said that she was like an angel, an author's angel, and she was an author's whisperer. And he was so happy to know that there was a book that would celebrate her as an editor, because from what he did write something after she passed away about her. And she found him, when he first came to this country, he's from Czechoslovakia, and the Three Golden Keys, I actually have it here. I wanted to show everybody. He grew up in Czechoslovakia, and this is a story about his childhood in Prague. And when he came to this country, he was painting eggs, and she came across them, and she wanted to know who this illustrator was, and she asked for his portfolio. And then she got in touch with him, and she told him, I think he had written some children's books in Czechoslovakia, and she gave him free rein for whatever he wanted to do. And, you know, he just felt she was such a wonderful person to work with. So and she cultivated, you know, to me, that shows how she cultivated young talent.
Yes. Well, do you have some people who are really enjoying this book a lot that you read? We have someone who's asking, is there an educator's guide?
Yeah,
lesson activity for the book?
I'm glad you asked, because I was a school librarian, of course. So, and I was a teacher. So this is something that I felt was important, because, and one of my dear friends, Maureen, is a third grade teacher that I used to work with. So I collaborated with her, and, you know, to see like what would be the best thing now, because I've been retired from teaching for 10 years, and, you know, I still have a good sense of things. But so what I came up with were these activity sheets, and there's some activity things for kids. And I even posted the one that our library did a book launch with me, and they did a cute little activity craft that had to do with writing, and like the little books that, like what her mother did with tying up the string. But on my website, I have some activities that kids could just do. And then for teachers, this book is a great book to launch Writers Workshop and Readers Workshop. So what we have are, if you go on my website, Ronni, RonniDiamondstein.com, and go into where it says extras, there's a link for the Writers Workshop launch and Readers Workshop launch. And it kind of gives a little step-by-step for how to do the launch, and then some little activity sheets. And there's even something that I love to do when I was a school librarian during National Library Week, is let kids design their own bookmark, and they could put a slogan or something on there. But there are other activities. So I encourage people to go there. They're downloadable, they're free, and please, use them. And even people who aren't teachers, some of those activities, there's like a journal, or be a writer like Jackie, be a journalist like Jackie, be an inquiring photographer like Jackie. So I think that's a great question. And thank you, whoever asked that, because I wanted
to. Actually, yes. We've had several people actually ask that. Yeah, so also great. There's people who want to know lots and lots of questions about did you reach out to anyone in the family? Did you have to talk to anyone? Did you have to get permission for something? So please share that.
Yes. Well, I definitely want to talk about that. I did not, the only family member I ever had any contact with was her cousin, John Davis. But, I respected their privacy, and I know that's how they are. So I didn't even, and honestly, I have, and between the books like by Carl Anthony, and then there's some other books that I have, and also she didn't do a lot of interviews, but in the 79, she did an interview with Gloria Steinem for Ms. Magazine. And then in the 90s, she did one for Publishers Weekly. So I accessed those articles that had, actually were interviews with her, because she didn't do a lot of interviews. So about permission, and this was really something, the poem Sea Joy, when I had it in the book, and Nicole, my editor, said, we need permission for that. So I said, okay. Jacqueline Kennedy is the ambassador to Australia, so I will reach out to her. I called the embassy in Australia and asked to speak to her. Of course, they wouldn't let me talk to her, but they gave me an email address. So I wrote and said that I was doing this book about what it was about, and who the publisher was, and could I have permission to reprint Sea Joy. So I thought, well, how long is this going to take to hear back from Caroline Kennedy's in Australia, and she's kind of busy as the ambassador. And 2 days later, I got an email back from Rachel Floor, who's the executive director of the Kennedy Foundation, and she wrote that Ambassador Kennedy was happy to give me permission to reprint the poem in the book. And I actually teared up when I got that email, because it meant the world to me that she would allow me to include this poem in my book. And I wanted to think that maybe it made her happy to know that a new generation would be meeting her mother and reading her poetry, because poetry has been important in Caroline's life. She did quite a few poetry collection anthologies. There's the book, The Best Loved Poems of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. She did a couple of other collections for children even, and a Christmas one. So it made me, I felt like, now I feel like I was meant to write this book, and I really kind of feel that I was meant to write this book. So good question.
Absolutely. It's just marvelous. Well, you mentioned earlier, and I want to say, and that you got a question about that, that you said you do have an agent, and how hard was it to find a publisher for this beautiful, wonderful book?
This is interesting. I do have an agent. I got the agent during the pandemic, which was wonderful. It's Larry Rosenblatt and Barbara Stewart from 22 Media Works. And the interesting thing is I had another picture book biography that they first were sending out, and nobody was interested in that. And then in April of 2022, we finally, after like getting this nailed down to the drafts and the version that I thought was a good manuscript to submit, they sent this out. And actually, within like a couple of days, Nicole from Sky Pony Press got in touch with Larry and said she was interested in this. And then it took, then it was the discussion of, okay, what's the advance, and back and forth with that. And then I didn't know what was, then it was like the summer, and a lot of things don't happen in the summer. And then August 1st, I get this email from Larry. Well, we're doing the book, and there you go.
Wow.
So, and the interesting thing that I think is a really inspiring story for people who want to write and get a book published, and it's not easy today. I had in that June turned 70, and I got my first contract at age 70. And I think it just shows that if you don't give up and you persevere, you can, things can happen. So that's
fantastic. That's wonderful. You never give up. You just keep on going, right?
Exactly.
Here's a really interesting question. I think it's really neat. Were there parts that you had to leave out of this book, and you might want to say, like, and I'm thinking, is there parts that had to be cut? I mean, you couldn't put everything in it, I'm sure. So was there anything that you were heartbroken about?
Well, I'm not really heartbroken, but what happened, and this is a really long, it's 3 pages of an author's note, which is really long. And I'm really lucky that they let me do this. I talked a lot about, I put a lot of what I couldn't put into the narrative that would be a beautiful story for children to read in this. And I talk about in the author's note about all the wonderful things she did as a first lady. And the one thing that I now wish that I had included in here is something that she was so famous for, and I knew this, but I just didn't get into the back matter, was Jackie saved Grand Central Station in New York City, and she's really famous for that. And I didn't put that in this narrative at the end of in the author's note, but I think that there's just so much else in here, and I feel good about what is in the back matter, some of the quotes, and about books she contributed to books I read when I was young, and she talked about the books that she loved, and so I got a lot of that into the back matter. So that's the only thing that I kind of regret that I didn't mention Grand Central, because I almost mentioned everything else, including the fact that she had an influence even though she had a kind of a behind the scenes responsibility for getting the Temple of Dender out of to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And it's funny because when I love that Temple of Dender, and I didn't at first know that Jackie had something to do with it. And whenever I go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I always had to go see it, because the way it's set, it's so peaceful and calm. And so, but that's in the back matter.
Right. But my goodness, you're forgiven. That's okay. I mean, there's so much to talk about.
I feel better now, because it has been bothering me, because especially I live in Chappaqua, New York, which is like 40-minute ride to Grand Central. And almost whenever I mention this book about Jackie, people say to me, especially men and women who take the train all the time, there's this big plaque about that honoring Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis for the Grand Central. And I said, yes. And then I think, oh, I didn't put it in the book. So anyway, but Michelle, thank you for forgiving me. I feel better now.
Yes, my goodness. And that's not really what your focus is here
No.
either. And
No.
as someone just pointed out, there's a marvelous children's book about Jackie
I know.
saving Grand Central.
And
So it's covered.
Yes, it's covered. I actually own that book because I thought it was a great book about her. Because I have a lot of books, even children's books about her. So
Right, which are marvelous too.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question here. How many words are in the main text, not including the back matter?
I think it's probably because it's probably under 1,000. It's or around 1,000.
Okay.
That's what they want you to do. I tend to write, it was a lot longer. But I think it's probably around 1,000 because that's what they like for picture book biographies for younger children. So
Okay. Very nice. And someone here is encouraging you, and I totally agree, to write your novel or write about an adult book about Jackie. I mean, you're so knowledgeable,
Well,
Ronni. It's so clear you're knowledgeable.
Well, I still have a lot of it started and I have an outline. I know how it's going to go, but I feel like, now I'm really loving, and that's so sweet. Whoever said that, thank you very much. It's kind of an interesting novel too. So, but I think like I'm working on other biographies about really amazing people. So I think
Are these going to be children's books too?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
wonderful.
In fact, my agent just sent out two, I can't say what they're about, but
Okay.
2 manuscripts. One is about a man though, and the other is about a woman. And like I said before, there has to be some kind of personal connection. And I didn't think of that when I thought about writing about these people, but there is. And I think I'm hopeful that they'll get picked up and there'll be books about them. And now I'm working on yet another, actually I have 2 other picture book biography seeds planted and working on.
Oh my goodness. Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that there's just so many people saying that they enjoyed, they can't wait to read this book, and they love that you're writing for young children. And that's very important too. I mean, I think that is another thing that Jackie was so passionate about, was getting children to read, that type of thing.
I spent my life doing that as a school librarian.
Right.
Beautiful books in the hands of children. And to me, that's really, you got to get kids interested in reading when they're really little. I have to say, my friend's daughter-in-law who lives in Los Angeles got the book and put a message on Facebook that she read it to her 3-year-old son, and who's rambunctious, and he was rapt with attention in this listening to it, and wanted to hear it again. So that makes me happy because,
oh my gosh,
that,
ultimate
a child that loves books, and that's really important. And for those of you out there, ask your library to get this book, and school librarians, I'm hoping they'll get the book, because even though it's written, the narrative is for younger children, it's a great resource if you're doing research about Jackie, because there's so much good material in the back matter, and I know that some middle school librarians told me they're getting the book, so
excellent.
I appreciate that. And as a librarian, I look at it in 2 ways. Like even when I was working on the book with Nicole, a lot of times I said to her, I'm not just looking at this as the author, I'm looking at it as a consumer of books. And that's why I was not picky, but I often, I told her how I felt about things, and I'm happy to say that, she had a lot of respect for me. I felt very respected by.
Absolutely, as you should be. I mean, this is your career, this is your profession, and so what is needed and what is helpful. And I think that's what everyone in the chat and asking questions are about. They understand that you are really about trying to, you know, what your life work has been, and now you're writing books based on what you know works and what interests children. What high praise to have a 3-year-old want it to be read again. That's the best. I mean, that's high praise.
Especially, I told his grandmother, and she said, you know, yes, he is rambunctious and he's a really smart kid. And I don't say that a lot, she said. So I thought, wow, you know, it's that makes the day. So
right.
And she posted that on a review on Amazon too.
Oh
so,
my goodness. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Ronni, I just think I know here at the National First Ladies Library, we love this book. We're so proud and honored to be selling it here, and so grateful to have you here. We want to make sure that everyone starts to see your name rise and your career. We can't wait for your next books that you're writing. So I know that everyone that's been watching today are going to, I think you've got some big fans here already. So
they can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram because my dog, Maggie Mae, that you met, I think you mentioned that about, she had a column. She's actually sleeping now, or else she would probably come and, she likes to interview people. She would like to probably talk to you. But my Instagram is Maggie Mae Pup Reporter, and on Twitter, I'm Maggie Mae 10514, but you can find me on Facebook, my website. You can contact me through that. If you love dogs, my dog has her own page on the website with all her. She's interviewed famous children's authors. One was someone who lived in our town, Jean Craighead George, who you may know, who she wrote a book called How to Talk to Your Dog, but she's a famous children's book author. So you can, if you're interested in dogs, you can look on the page. If you want to see my photography, because I'm a photographer too, and you can see some of the other interviews I've done too, and that's it. But it's just, I can't tell you what an honor and a privilege it is to be spending time with you and the First Ladies National Library. When I got the email from Allison, I was just overwhelmed, and it really means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. And it's been fun talking to you, Michelle. We can talk.
Yes. I know I could talk to you forever. I really could. And there's people wanting to know, are you going on a book tour? Are you promoting the book anywhere else besides the area?
I'm just doing local for now. It's to be honest with you, celebrities get sent on book tours more than people with their debut children's book. So at this point, I did what's called a blog tour. If you go on to my website on the news page, you'll see all the different interviews I did. I was on our local News 12, and a couple of local press have done stories on me. So, but you can, ask your library to get this book if you don't want to buy it. It does make it's a great gift for teachers to have for their classroom. It's a great, holidays are coming up. It's a great book for that. And the people can get signed copies through you. And also, if you aren't able to get it through because of course I'd want you to buy it from the National First Ladies Library, but anyone who contacts me and wants a signed book plate, I'm happy to send that to them. If you just contact me through my website, I'll be more than happy to do that. So
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, well, Ronni, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you today. I've been looking forward to this so long, and you just made my whole day. It's going to be lovely the rest of the day.
You made my day too. I'm really happy. And I see somebody I just glanced over the chat, and I saw somebody who was really happy that I told that I was 70 years old, because people often say, don't say how old you are. Well, I'm happy that I'm here and that I'm 70. And I think this is an inspiring story of just you just never know what's going to happen next. And
That's for
so
sure.
follow your, like Jackie followed her passion. That's what I hope children will follow their passion. I hope that they'll make connections to this book, even if it's not about reading. Do they have like a connection with a grandparent like Jackie had with hers? Do they have their own little library? You know, I just hope that's what, as teachers, we want children to connect with books, and that way they will love books like Jackie.
Right. That's perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's just been a lovely, lovely little time here together. And we wish you nothing but continued success, Ronni. I know you're going to do wonderful, wonderful things. So thank you so much for being with us today. And thank all of you for being here at the National First Ladies Library and Museum. I want to thank Kate out there who's running the show for us, and Stephanie Bonnet, my partner in crime, who is being with us too today. Ronni, we wish you only the best, and thank you all for being here. Please have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.